What's up, everybody? I'm Meaghan Ziemba, host of Mavens of Manufacturing, and today I'm here at the NPE Plastics Show 2024 in Orlando. And let me tell you something, I am completely overwhelmed. It's my first time here, but it's super exciting and I can't wait to spend some more time around the expo show. But today we're talking to Hannah Belmont. She is the marketing manager and talent development manager for, oh my God, I just messed up. Westminster. I want to say minister, and I'm like, no, that's not right. It's Westminster.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited to talk to you today, Hannah. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be back. I mean, it's been 6 years since the last show. I think everybody here has been really anxious and excited to get back together, networking with old friends, seeing that equipment running. So,
yeah.
And especially being back in Orlando, it's been great to be.
I had no idea it was every 3 years.
Yeah.
So when you were like, it's been 6 years, I'm like, oh, it's every 3 years.
Yeah, it's a big gap. Yeah.
That's crazy. So It's my first time here.
Yeah.
It's your third, you said?
Second. This is my second NPE, yeah.
Were you just as overwhelmed your first year?
Oh, definitely. Especially because like 3 years might not sound like a lot, but in the manufacturing space, like that's so much innovation and technology over a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the last 6 years, a lot has changed.
Well,
and I think the companies here sense that.
Yeah, and even like within the last 2 years and after the pandemic, I think everybody realized that, hey, we have to be able to keep our processes up and running. So now automation's like a huge thing too. And I see automation all over the place, even here. So that's really, really cool. I want to talk more about you though. I found it interesting that you and I kind of came from the same cloth of like journalism and editorial, because I had no idea that you worked at Gardner Business, and that's awesome because I was a competitor of yours, which is okay, we're spreading the news. But I do want to talk about how you're getting talent through the door, because right now, wherever you go, there's a skills gap and people are struggling with labor. So how is Westminster Tool commitment to fostering a positive, inclusive culture contributed to its success in attracting a diverse workforce over time? Because you're a small company. You only have 35 employees, what you told me.
35 employees, and we've stayed small. We're a small family business, and we've stayed that size over the last 10 to 12 years. So, for us, talking about diversity and inclusion and kind of that fostering that work environment that's going to attract that next generation, for us, I mean, we're talking about a 10-year journey that it's taken us. And the inclusivity and the diversity that we have at our facility that we're really proud of, it was kind of an outcome, not a goal. Our goal really stemmed from out of a need, a desperation to find workers. Flashback to 10 years ago, before I joined my family's business, we had an aging workforce. We were struggling to recruit. We were spending thousands on ads to try and find talented, skilled people. When we did, they didn't last. We had a turnover problem. I mean, it was just money going out the door for our workforce. We had a cross-training issue. Our quality was down. So we had a lot of real challenges that a lot of small businesses and large businesses face. And we kind of had to do some really fast self-reflection. And some of that self-reflection that came up was, okay, well, our culture, if we're going to try and grow, not even just grow, sustain, how are we going to keep our doors open and keep serving our customers if we can't find people? And a lot of companies here at NPE and in manufacturing everywhere can relate to that. So we found that the answer was company culture. We need to build a culture that people want to work at. What is that going to look like? So 10 years ago, we started brainstorming. If we were to dream of the perfect environment, what would that look like? And a lot of it came down to communication, having more improved conversations about challenges. Improving how we interact with our coworkers, building that trust and relationship, and being more selective in the kind of people that were joining our team. We found that we had a recruitment problem. That okay, we can't find talented people that want to work here. We need to change what we're looking for. So that's kind of where we started.
What sort of changes in recruitment specifically did you make to really attract that next generation workforce? Because right now, currently, we have a lot of generations in manufacturing. We have the baby boomers, we have the Gen Xers, we have the millennials, and then we have Gen Z, and now Gen Alpha is already coming up the work. So what specifically were you changing about the way
Yeah,
that you're
well,
attracting?
I'll tell you the ideal candidate we used to look for. The ideal candidate was somebody, you know, we're a mold maker. We build molds for injection molding and complex injection molds. So we were originally looking for, we were standard tool shop, standard tool services, and we were looking for people with 7+ years and 5+ years of experience, preferably a tool maker from, you know, a competitor or somebody with a referral, somebody who maybe had a tool maker apprenticeship under their belt, had done their journeyman, and that's where we were unsuccessful. So we said, okay, we need to throw that out the door. So what we did was a little unconventional. We said, okay, we're no longer looking at resumes for employment. No previous technical experience required. We said we're no longer going to require previous experience. Instead, we're going to hire for character, train for skill. We're going to look for core values, personality traits that are non-negotiable and that you can't teach. We're going to look for those first, be very choosy about those, and then we're going to build those people up from the ground up. That's the start of our cultural journey. Was not only did we change how we train, but we completely changed the game about how we recruited.
That's really interesting. So with that changeover, how did that affect how many women applied? Because I know, like, there's studies out there that initially when women were looking at job descriptions, if they saw language that wasn't pertaining kind of to what they valued in themselves, or if it was like all these qualifications and they didn't feel like 100% qualified for the position, then they wouldn't apply. Whereas men, 60%, if they felt confident, then they would apply for it.
Which is still totally true. And I've even been, in my own professional career path, have felt that kind of doubt in looking at a job description being like, well, I don't match it 100%. And I think what we've done at Westminster Tool is we've looked at it two ways. First is core values. Okay. We used to, and these are very subtle nuances in how we recruit, but we used to use language like we want somebody who's strong, direct, competitive.
A ninja.
Right. Like we want abrasive. Like there were certain personality types, you know, we want somebody who's really fast, who's direct. And we wanted these personality traits that were a very specific type of person, and not everybody's like that. So we actually, by changing our core values, we found that we attracted a wider net. Our core values are being curious, asking really good questions, having integrity, being true to your word and trustworthy, being dynamic, being open to change, being highly motivated. So just by using those adjectives, we found that we appealed to a larger audience. And then the second part of that is the technical experience part, which is, you know, the manufacturing industry is generational. Right. I am very fortunate that it's my family's business. I grew up in a machine shop. I'm very fortunate that at a very early age, I had a positive association with manufacturing. That's kind of rare. And I actually feel like if you walk around a lot of these trade shows and you speak to a lot of family businesses in manufacturing, you're going to hear something similar. Oh, my uncle was a manufacturer. Oh, you know, my cousin or my dad was in manufacturing. My own dad inspired me. His dad was in manufacturing. It's very generational, which is something that we're really proud of, but at the same time, it's kind of systemic. So we found that by not looking for technical experience, we could really create that bond with people who've never had a positive association with manufacturing. And especially for women, we found a lot of success, not just with young women, but also with women who are older in their careers, maybe, empty nesting moms who were looking for a career change, or, people who really just wanted a fresh start. We found that by changing our shift a little bit that way, that's the appeal that we were able to give.
Right. So in terms of like not specifically honing in on the technical skills, what sort of options then do you provide people who come through your doors with training? Like, how are you supporting their development and their growth, and what sort of options do they have like with their continuous improvement?
And that's a huge component of that cultural puzzle, is that it's nice to say we hire for character, train for skill. It's nice to say we don't really look at resumes, but at the end of the day, we kind of have to hold up our end of the deal, which is how are we going to build those people from the ground up? So some of that is we really focused on building our team into being better learners and better teachers. So we really focused internally with our existing workforce on how to cross-train each other. And we made that a requirement for employment. You have to be willing to train others and to learn new things. So that's one part of it. Another component was that we partnered really heavily with our local community colleges and local industry associations to help us with that training. Because as everybody knows, training internally is expensive.
Right.
It's costly, especially for small businesses. That's a huge, training is one of the highest costs for onboarding new people. So we found that by partnering with local community colleges, we were able to actually work with them to build basic manufacturing curriculum that we can, for free, sponsored by the state of Connecticut. We're very fortunate that we've got a great state that invests heavily in manufacturing education. So that definitely helps. We could send them to these community colleges for manufacturing training. They would learn the basics, blueprint reading, GD&T.
Okay.
You know, they're learning the basics of machining. They're learning about continuous improvement, those kind of foundational elements. They'd get 75% of the way there. We'd bring them back, and then they'd learn Westminster Tool's secret sauce.
That's awesome. So then engaging with students at an early age is really crucial. And I think it's shaping a lot of the perceptions of manufacturing careers. Could you share some initiatives or programs that your company has undertaken to create positive experiences with manufacturing as early as elementary school? Because I think at the high school level, it's too late.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say too late, because there are high school students who are starting to they're saying, I just read an article not too long ago where they're saying Gen Z is really getting more involved with the trades than wanting to go to college.
Yeah.
But I think we can do a lot better job, because I know at my kids' school, the firemen and the policemen are coming in, and now my kids want to be firemen and policemen.
It's all about perception.
Because that's what they see, right? So what are you doing specifically?
I think it's come a long way. It's not just about what, I definitely see it with the industry as a whole. I mean, you can feel it. You can feel it here. You can feel it in the way that people are talking about workforce development and the skills gap today.
Right.
But the industry has come a long way in making manufacturing careers more sexy, more attractive, more financially sustainable for work-life balance. I mean, there's all these benefits in manufacturing that I think the industry is doing a much better job at advocating for.
Okay.
So that's first, is I think the industry as a whole is doing really good with that. For us, you know, going back to my own personal story, I'm lucky that I grew up in a machine shop, but I didn't jump right into the manufacturing industry. I went to school for journalism.
Right.
I ended up kind of accidentally writing about manufacturing and realizing that I loved it. In my own, you know, career path, I didn't think I wanted to be in manufacturing. It wasn't pitched to me as something that was attractive.
Right.
Even when I was in high school. So I think about that and how different, even from when I was in high school to now, how far we've come. And part of that is because the manufacturing industry is more synonymous with technology. You used to think about manufacturing as being dirty and direct labor, and I feel like we've really done a good job at combating that. And the other part of that is what it actually cost to join the manufacturing industry. There used to be, and there still is a little bit, this huge gap between direct labor, I'm going to push buttons on a machine, and an engineer on the other side of the spectrum. I'm going to contribute to manufacturing strategy and innovation. There used to be this huge gap of careers in the middle of that, and there's a whole talent pool of skilled jobs in between that gap that need to be filled.
Right.
And so now you don't have to get a 4-year degree to become a plastics engineer to be really contributing to plastics innovation. And you don't have to just find, you know, a low skill or low entry level position in plastics where it's not a lot of complexity and there's not a lot of upward mobility. There's all this, you know, space in between that we're starting to fill now.
Right.
And those careers are way more accessible than they used to be. Now there's certificate programs, apprenticeships, workshops, you know, job shadows. There are all these programs in between. So for youth in particular, going back to that first part, we found a lot of success with investing at the elementary level with things like makerspace programs.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, makerspace programs are basically manufacturing-related STEM curriculum that they're introducing from first grade onward for hands-on learning. Because at Westminster Tool, part of what we incorporated into that kind of emotional intelligence and cultural transformation was understanding how people learn. And we found that people are all different types of learning styles. And the traditional American education system isn't really geared yet towards hands-on learning. How many people in manufacturing have you talked to that have said, I didn't really like school, I wasn't a great student?
There were a ton that told me that. But there was also a ton that didn't consider manufacturing when they were in, because you, for example, I have a similar story where I sucked at math and science, but I liked making things with my hands. But because I was so good at English, they're like, you need to be a teacher or you need to be a marketer. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like me at all. And then I ended up being a tech writer. And that's how I fell into this. So I think we do need to do a better job as a sector with all of the positions that you mentioned. There's this huge gap. How do we bring those forth and let kids know that, because not everybody's going to know what plastics engineering is or what injection molding is. So in your opinion, how can we better educate the community then to what these positions are and what it takes to actually get in them? Because you don't have to go to a 4-year college to do that.
And I think it starts with understanding those different learning styles, right? Auditory, visual, hands-on. Where are people, what is somebody, every individual is different, and what is their greatest strength and their greatest potential.
I love that.
And fitting to that, right? That's a huge component of Westminster Tool's mission, is to recognize people's greatest potential, recognize them as an individual, and then cater to that. And recognizing that we're all different and we're all different combinations of that. So the first is recognizing that people learn differently. But I would say the next is going back to basics of what is manufacturing. Manufacturing is not just all this mechanical movement. A lot of it is critical problem solving, solving challenges, being more efficient, looking at efficiency, doing more with less, reducing waste. I mean, there are these really foundational elements of troubleshooting and solving problems that makes the manufacturing industry so unique. And I think that if we start fostering those kind of ideas at a really young level, that's how you battle the diversity issue. That's how you battle the gender issue. That's how you battle the age issue. Is that students are motivated by those things, solving problems, working with their hands, troubleshooting, getting better. So if we're able to create those positive associations early on, it's a long game, but it's one worth investing in, I think.
I feel like the younger kids are, the more they use their imagination, and then as soon as they're in the system, society kind of dims that light a little bit. So then they're used to having a habit of just doing things, and then they forget how to, and digital technology is not helping either, like with the cell phones and stuff, but it's kind of like dampering their creativity in the way. So I think if we can bring manufacturing in at younger ages and get that spark going and keep it going as they go through middle school and high school, and show them that there are different options.
And there's regional and on a national level too. I mean, some of the ways that Westminster Tool does that is we invest in our makerspace programs in the public schools. We also work with middle school and high school students on career development, mock interviews, helping them build their resumes, talking to the parents, bringing them in for tours.
That's awesome.
Some of the exposure is with the students, some of it is with the parents, and that's super helpful. The parents and guardians, right? Those influencers in those kids' lives. Like, that's really important. And then part of it's on the national level. We think that, programs like First Robotics and federal funding for STEM education programs, those on a bigger scale, those are really impactful.
I really like that you're also talking to the parents, because sometimes they don't know what today's manufacturing is. And I was at an event, and a younger girl came by one of the booths, and she wanted to know more about their underwaters robotics program. And really the mom's like, just kind of rolling her eyes and stuff, and the lady behind the table is like, yeah, here's a brochure. And the mom's like, wait a minute, that's actually like real? I thought it was only on the, like, she didn't even know underwater robotics was a real thing. So I just think that's really cool.
Even my own knowledge, I mean, coming to shows like NPE, there's all this technology that even with our small business, some of this technology I didn't even know existed. So that's kind of what's cool about manufacturing too, is that you kind of have to see it in person. So giving a brochure to a parent saying, here are career paths in manufacturing, really just isn't enough.
It's not, because they're not going to know some of those roles either.
You got to bring them into your shops.
Or trade shows like this.
Or trade shows. Exactly.
So creating flexibility and support for families and new mothers. is a significant goal of yours. So what steps is Westminster Tool taking to achieve this? And how do you see it benefiting both employees and the company as a whole? And I think I'm going to love this part of it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this part, particularly because Westminster Tool, we're a really young company, several years in the making, but our average age is about 30.
Okay.
And, you know, for us, we have a lot of women and men on the shop floor that are family planning. So part of, you know, being able to be that inclusive workforce is you have to make an environment where people feel comfortable, not just, they have to be comfortable being their true authentic self, right, without judgment. But they also, that also means that they need the resources that are more accessible to them.
Right.
So some of the things, we've already tried really hard to make this culture that's giving that work-life balance to all of our employees.
Okay.
But one of the things that we're being a little bit more intentional about is things like flexible work hours. How do we stay competitive with maternity and paternity leave?
Right.
You know, giving those benefits, making sure that we are constantly searching for the best healthcare benefits and medical benefits that we can to support those families.
Right.
You know, those are just a few of those ways that we're trying to make sure that we're supporting them. Because at the end of the day, your talent is everything. Your talent is your moneymaker.
Right.
And if you're not giving them the support that they need, they're either their performance is going to go down, your customers aren't getting served, or, which is often the case, they go somewhere else that is taking advantage of it.
Well, I think that it's great that you're making those changes, because I think traditionally overall, mothers, especially like single mothers or even single fathers, I'm going to stick to the single mothers because over centuries we've been male dominated, but single mothers have probably avoided entering in manufacturing because they didn't think that it would be a flexible place for them. And I know a lot of companies are even starting to build like childcare facilities within their manufacturing facility and working with the parents.
Childcare is huge. Yeah. And then, I mean, it sucks that we have to keep saying it, but it comes down to job security too.
Right.
And that's where it always comes back to cross training. Is that women who are family planning in a manufacturing field, in any industry, regardless of manufacturing, they need to know that their job is secure when they come back. They need to feel that it's not going to impact their ability to grow in that company or rise. That job security is everything.
Right.
And one way to do that is to bring more cross training. So making sure that that person who's already bringing a lot of value, woman or male or female, whatever value they're bringing to the company, who are they duplicating with? Who are they cross-training so that when they leave, they're stress-free? They can leave the office for vacation. They can leave for maternity or paternity leave and not worry about the security of their job.
So how are you doing that as a smaller company? Because with bigger corporations, I think it's easier for them to do that because they have a ton of employees and they might have multiple people in one department. So it's not as hard to but I've worked for small family-owned businesses, and when one person left, if they didn't have that cross-training, there were a ton of fires to be put up, or it was just completely ignored, and then that poor person coming back to work had to work long hours just to catch up. So what are you doing?
That's one of those things where it's the long game. I wish I had an overnight answer to give to companies. If you do this one thing, all of those big tribal knowledge risks that you have in the company are safe, but I don't have that. I mean, what we built was 10 years in the making, and it was a lot of trial and error. What I can say is that it started with our existing employees and making sure that everybody was on the same page of, in order for you to elevate, you need to duplicate. So first was making sure that every single employee is on the same page and understanding that you have to be able to learn something new and train others. And we made that non-negotiable. And that was some growing pains too. Not everybody who was working at our facility or looking to work at Westminster Tool was on board with that. And that's okay. Some people want to go to a job and they want to do one thing really, really well and they want to go home, and that's okay. But that's what makes us different. And we said, hey, you need to be game with supporting your coworkers. And that means that if Alan needs to leave because his kid needs surgery, and he needs to be out for 3 weeks, he needs to cross-train somebody on hard mill, and somebody needs to step in to fill his spot. So Amy's going to cross-train in hard mill while Alan's out in surgery, and Wes has never worked on EDM before. He's now going to train on setting up electrodes. So it's that constant flexing. And when you trust your environment, you trust your company, you trust your coworkers, it's amazing that it just happens naturally.
A lot of people say don't call your coworkers family, but you kind of need that mentality in smaller businesses because
it seems simple, but it comes down to communication. If you're not able to communicate with somebody who's drastically differently next to you, you'll never have that cultural environment that you need in order to be able to do these things.
Right. So career development and hands-on learning are vital,
Yeah.
especially for underprivileged communities to access opportunities in manufacturing. So how is Westminster Tool working to provide more of these opportunities? And what impact do you hope to see in these communities as a result? And I find this conversation very close to home because I collaborate with a gentleman named Drew Crow, and he works with underrepresented communities as well too. And I just don't think a lot of them are given a fair chance. And I think some people are afraid to go where they're at to kind of share what we're doing here. So what are you doing specifically?
Well, I think for us, our journey in that case was, it is an uncomfortable situation when you're talking about how to support these underrepresented communities. It can be an intimidating, a very overwhelming conversation, especially if you're new to talking about how can we do our part. It can be really intimidating at the beginning, but it doesn't have to be. It starts a lot with self-reflection.
Right.
So we looked at our own community, which is very diverse, and unfortunately a lot of areas of our community in Connecticut don't have the resources that they need in the school system. And we looked at our own workforce and we're like, our workforce doesn't match our community. What are we doing wrong?
Right.
So part of that question really starts from self-reflecting. What do we need to be doing better to help these people and make this a more attractive place for them to work? And then going to the schools and talking to the parents is great for career awareness. But if those people don't have access to education, don't have access to career fairs or places to help them, build out their resumes, they don't have strong mentors in their life that are kind of coaching them through career development. I mean, I remember what I was like at 18 and trying to figure out what my career path looked like. And if I didn't have the people in my life coaching me, I would have never gotten to where I was. So part of it is making sure that young people in underrepresented communities have the tools they need to succeed. This means that they have to have access to technology. They have to have access to the right trained professionals, teachers or otherwise, that can help coach them through really tricky life decisions. And that's what we're trying to do. So we help sponsor programs like Sector, the Southeastern Connecticut Robotics Organization, which really is focused in an underrepresented community and making sure that they have computers, they have robots that they can test, making sure that they have transportation to facilities to do tours. We're also working with the community colleges and hopefully the high schools in our area, to be determined, coming up soon, this is next, to do career development for technical teachers. So we're actually, one of the things that I would love to do is bring high school STEM teachers into our facility and train them, train the trainers.
I love that. I was going to ask, that was actually going to be my next question, because there are a lot of communities where there is this gap of what's actually happening in industry and what they're actually teaching at the high school level, even sometimes at the community level, because they just don't have the subject matter experts to pass that knowledge on to them. The high school that I graduated from, there's a teacher who is the carpentry teacher, but the CNC machine instructor who retired 3 times already came back out of retirement to train the carpentry teacher to work the CNC machine. So I think that's very important that you said that, and I think that's amazing. Let's talk about FLIP though. What is FLIP?
So FLIP is the Future Leaders in Plastics Group. So that's an organization that is part of the Plastics Industry Association, and it's a group that's really geared towards supporting young people rising in leadership positions in plastics.
Okay.
So, I've been aware of FLIP and I've been an active member for about 5 years now. So, and the group is really active. It's grown so much. And one of my favorite things about FLIP and events like this is not only the ability to network, but to learn about different types of technologies, especially for young people who are starting their careers in manufacturing, and especially women, I personally have benefited so much from the networking and the mentorship. So I actually have my mentor here, Peter Friddle from Progressive. So being able to have somebody who is outside of your company that you can judge-free go to, or even a young person at another company, and say, here's the challenge or concern that I have. How would you navigate this if you were me? Do you guys have this problem at your company? being able to have a really close-knit community where you can tap into for questions like that, I think is huge for young people. And I also think it's huge for diversity in manufacturing as a whole, that mentorship and networking
Absolutely.
aspect. Yeah.
So did you pick Peter or did Peter pick you?
So we actually, it's funny, like Westminster Tool, you know, we've known Progressive for forever. And the guy, everybody at Progressive is amazing. And we got matched together, but we had already known each other.
Okay.
So Flip has this paired mentorship program where, you know, mentee and mentor can apply to be a part of the program and get matched together. And you fill out this questionnaire about what are your career goals?
I love that.
What kind of person are you looking for? So like for me, one of my biggest challenges is that I have a lot of imposter syndrome. Like I don't have an engineering degree. I didn't go to a trade school. This is my family's business. I needed reassurance that I belong here in this industry and that I have something to contribute as somebody who sees himself as not being hugely technical. And I want to be technical.
Right.
So one of the great, you know, conversations in that mentorship and some of the networking that I've done through Flip is tackling that imposter syndrome as a young person, and seeking out resources for not only how can you get more basic understanding of the industry, but what kind of ways can you build that confidence? And Peter's really helped me with that.
So what was the tipping point for you then to actually come into manufacturing with your family business?
So I kind of realized, and I'm sure you can relate to this with your background too, is I just loved talking to people and asking questions. Like the passion in the plastics industry specifically and the manufacturing industry as a whole, like early on in my career, just getting to ask people questions about what they do and what they make is so unique to this industry. I've never seen a passion like that anywhere else. And once I kind of built those relationships on my own, separate of my family's business, that was the biggest turning point for me, is I'm like, I'm not going anywhere else.
That's awesome. So for anyone who's watching this or considering getting into engineering and manufacturing, why would you tell them to specifically look into the plastics industry? Because there's so much, right? It's a broad spectrum. What makes plastics very unique from everything else?
Well, I think that with the plastics industry has definitely hit a turning point in the last few years. We talk a lot about perception, right? Perception for workforce development, the skills gap, manufacturing jobs. The plastics industry has had its ups and downs for that same level of perception. And I actually feel like this show, NPE, and all of the events that we've had pre-COVID, post-COVID, shows that the plastics industry is not it's not the same industry that we had 10, 20 plus years ago. So the first is that plastics has really become on even playing field with innovation and really complex technology. So, you know, you have a lot of these sexy manufacturing terms like automation and 3D printing, robotics and AI and all of what people don't understand is that not only is plastics using that, but it's such a huge component of our daily lives that if you're somebody who doesn't like getting stuck doing the same thing, is driven by change and flexibility and growth, you got to join the plastics industry, because as we see here and elsewhere, like every year it's changing. The innovation is constant. I mean, people can barely keep up with recyclable materials, with processing, with all of the different operations, efficiency, lean. I mean, the technology out there is just crazy. So if technology is what drives you, I can't imagine a better niche place than something in plastics.
Well, before I let you go, Hannah, because this has been really fun and really interesting, and I'm just happy that we connected on the media side of things. If you had one ask for our audience, what would your biggest ask be for them?
I would say self-reflection for small businesses. I mean, one of the things, I get a lot of questions about, okay, that's great what Westminster Tool is doing with their culture, but it's too expensive, or we're too small, or it's too big, it's too much change too fast. I get a lot of that apprehension, and I think that what we did at Westminster Tool was for us. It was personalized to us based on the challenges we were facing at the time, based on the needs that we had for our customer base, and we really made it all about self-reflection. So before anybody, any company, regardless of size, starts on a cultural transformation journey, you really have to ask yourself, what are my problems? What are we doing wrong? What are we personally responsible for inside of our own company that we should be changing the way we think? It's one thing to say, okay, I want to do what Westminster Tool does, but it starts with self-reflection.
Right.
Is ask yourself, what kind of challenges are you facing, and how do you specifically need to change to address it? And everything else kind of comes organically.
So probably like reevaluate their core values and see if that's actually matching up with
what's
what
your
they're
goal,
doing.
what's your mission, who is your ideal candidate, what are some of those character traits that are non-negotiable?
Right.
For us, going back to that business side, the business case, we made those core values not just for our employees and new recruits. We've really embedded it into everything we do. We've broken up with customers over these core values. Right. We built partnerships on these core values. Like, it's not enough to throw some fluffy words on something and say, oh, we're being diverse, we're being inclusive, we have a positive culture. Like, you really got to eat, sleep, and breathe it. And you have to be prepared for that journey. And it can be a long road. It can be expensive, and it can be frustrating. But it all comes back to that self-reflection and what are you trying to gain from it? How is it going to benefit your business and your people?
And I think that's an important point, especially with this younger generation coming in, because they're really quick to call people out on their BS.
Yeah, their BS radar is really good, I will say. But it has to be authentic too.
Yeah.
And that's why I talk about outcome versus goals, is that we have a lot of women on our shop floor, and we love that. We're so proud of that. But we didn't set out with that goal, like, we need more women on the floor. Like, that was an outcome of having an awesome place to work.
That's awesome.
And I think that's what's missing from the way people are thinking about it.
Well, Hannah, I want to thank you for taking the time today, because I know this show is massive and you're super busy, but I appreciate you taking the time. Yeah. How can people get in touch with you, and what's the quickest way to reach out if they have any questions?
So we are exhibiting at the show, so you can find us in the West Hall this week, but westminstertool.com and on social media. We are constantly sharing the stories of our employees and what we're doing about our company culture. And we love to connect with companies there. But aside from that, thank you for the opportunity to sit down and rest my feet. And thank you so much for having me. Yeah. This was an honor, really.
Thanks, Hannah. Well, that's today for our conversation. I'm Meaghan Ziemba. This is Mavens of Maven. Well, it's not Mavens of Maven Manufacturing. I'm actually the host of that. But I'm at the NPE Plastics Show here in Orlando. And yeah, I'm just super excited to get back out on the trade show floor. So if you haven't been here, or if you're in Orlando currently, you got to stop at this show. It's massive, it's great, and there's a ton of technology all over the place. Thanks, guys.